There's a study making headlines right now. You'll see it in the news all over the place. Eggs reduce Alzheimer's risk by 47%. I mean, right now you should be raising chickens to get your own eggs, to start living off of eggs, because this is huge. Now, I'm not going to even say this was false or the researchers were unscientific or whatever, but I do want to share some background information on how they came up with this number, because that's very important. You just need to know how they build these studies, okay? So let me just quickly go through it. I mean, just first think about what people think when they read this. They're thinking, if I consume eggs, I'm going to lower my risk for Alzheimer's by 47%. That's not what this means. So if we're going to compare a group that consumes eggs and they're relatively healthy compared to a very unhealthy group, we're easily going to get a number like this. But the 47% decrease doesn't mean that you're going to get this when you start consuming eggs. So it's very important to read the research to see what they're comparing, because then that'll tell you really what's going on. The other thing to look at when they're doing research is who's funding the research. The Egg Nutrition Center is funded through the American Egg Board, which is a governmental program created in 1976. And then also you should know who is on this board. The single largest egg producer in the US is on that board. So let's push that to the side for a second and talk about eggs in relation to your cognitive function. This is fascinating. The first thing you need to know is what an egg is. People think of an egg as a protein source, just like they would think of meat as a protein source. But an egg is very different than meat. An egg has been evolved to build an entire organism. And what's even more wild is researchers have cataloged in a single egg over 854 different proteins. So the egg produces one protein called lysozyme. Okay, this is a natural antibacterial. It's also been found in trials to lower your blood pressure by nearly 8 points. Then we have the IgY antibody that in randomized controlled trials reduce H. pylori by 39%. And then we get cystatin. Okay, this is a protein studied in Alzheimer's animal models that improve memory. And then this protein right here, they studied in perimenopausal women. It showed that it actually helped maintain bone density. The next huge benefit that the egg actually will give you, especially for your brain health, it's called choline. Your brain communicates using a chemical called acetylcholine. Okay, this is like a communication particle that flows through the nerves. And in Alzheimer's disease, the neurons that produce acetylcholine are the first ones to die. Just consuming 2 eggs will give you 300 milligrams of choline. That's more than you can get from almost any other food except liver. If you don't eat eggs or liver, chances are you're probably deficient in choline. If we look at the most widely prescribed Alzheimer's drugs in the world, take a wild guess how they work. They have a very similar mechanism that involves stopping your brain from breaking down acetylcholine. That's it. Okay, they're not actually increasing acetylcholine. They're preventing the destruction of acetylcholine. I mean, my question is, why don't you just get more choline from certain foods? The next nutrient that's in an egg that's very unique is lutein. It's very important in your brain. The brain preferentially accumulates lutein above almost any other nutrient, specifically to protect you against damage to the myelin sheath, the outer coating around the nerves. And if you compare caged eggs or even cage-free eggs compared to pasture-raised eggs, the pasture-raised eggs have 4 to 5 times the lutein. Okay, now let's shift gears to what Alzheimer's really is. Alzheimer's is a condition where the neurons are not getting fuel. They're dying. In an Alzheimer's brain, the neurons have a closed door for glucose. Glucose is no longer efficiently feeding the neurons. And so many people nowadays have what's called insulin resistance, which basically it's a closed door, and now you can't absorb the fuel needed to get into the mitochondria to fuel the cell, especially the neuron. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't test this, but this condition brews in the oven and occurs for decades before even the first symptom. Now, the good news is there is a back door to allow for a different fuel source. You can bypass the damage and feed the neurons directly with ketones. And that's because ketones are not dependent on insulin. Research from Stephen Cunane's group at the University of Sherbrooke found that in people with early Alzheimer's disease, glucose uptake in the brain was already significantly impaired, but ketone uptake was completely normal. The back door is still open. And this is why so many people have gone low carb, because they found that it improves the cognitive function. There's one frequently cited study that showed ketones causing damage. What they did is they added ketones at massive levels, much higher than you would ever get. The concentrations they used mimic a very pathogenic, dangerous disease called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is very rare, but it occurs when a type 1 diabetic forgets to take their medication and the ketones get out of control. You never see this with a normal person going on a low-carb diet. But what was really interesting when you read the study, there's 3 different types of ketones, and the dominant ketones that your body produces on a ketogenic diet produced 0 adverse effects. So a lot of people ask me, what supplements do I recommend? Now, of course, I'm not biased of my own high-quality supplement line, but if you go to Amazon and type Dr. Berg supplements, you'll find more information. So I want to come back to this egg again, because the egg is literally the most perfect brain package. It has very high-quality protein. It's very low carb, which is going to keep your insulin down, which is exactly what we want to do. It's loaded with choline. It's loaded with lutein. It has other nutrients to power your neurons, B1, B2, B6, B12. It has trace minerals, iodine, selenium. It has omega-3 fatty acids. It has another antioxidant called zeaxanthin. It has vitamin E, vitamin D, and folate. But there's one more huge benefit from the egg that's very fascinating. The egg has twice as much cholesterol than the equivalent amount of beef. And for decades, we treated the egg as something high in cholesterol to avoid. But what you should know is the brain runs on cholesterol. Your brain actually makes its own cholesterol. And another thing you should really know is low cholesterol, not high, is associated with worse cognitive performance. People with cholesterol under 200 performed worse on cognitive tests than people with high cholesterol above 240. And there's many other studies that back that up. Statins, a drug that blocks cholesterol, involve the FDA requiring every statin medication to carry a warning label for what? Memory loss. One study involving nearly 500,000 people found that the risk of acute memory loss was 4.4 times higher within 30 days of starting a statin. There was even a famous case in the medical literature of a man who consumed 25 eggs every single day for decades. His cholesterol ended up being normal. His absorption rate was roughly 18%. And if you compare that with the average population, like it's 50 to 56%, his body obviously just adapted to it. Because your liver gets rid of excess, okay? If you don't need it, your liver just gets rid of it. If we compare the conventional chicken eggs and cage-free to pasture-raised eggs, there's a huge difference with the nutrients inside that egg. The ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in caged eggs is 51 to 1, okay? In pasture-raised eggs, it's roughly 6 to 1. So in other words, there's going to be more inflammation involved in the conventional eggs. Now, if we take a look at lutein or zeaxanthin, that's those antioxidants, you're going to see 4 to 5 times higher amounts of those antioxidants in the pasture-raised eggs. If you can get eggs from a local farmer at a farmer's market, that would be even better. But let's say, for example, you're a college student or you're on a budget or you don't have the money for pasture-raised eggs. Conventional eggs are still going to be better than a lot of other options out there. So a lot of people ask me, what supplements do I recommend? Now, of course, I'm not biased of my own high-quality supplement line, but if you go to Amazon and type Dr. Berg supplements, you'll find more information.